Roland Mumford with Mumford.law. Last night we did a video about an issue of a Georgia County sheriff, a former sheriff that is, that had used restraint chairs as punishment in punitive measures rather than for the purpose of protecting the inmate from danger to himself or others working in the jail. And that video has gotten quite a bit of attention and is doing pretty well. So today I wanted to kind of do more of a global video about the use of restraint chairs and show two particular examples in news reports where one involved a neurodivergent child, an autistic child or a teenager, where he'd been in the jail and he was having a manifestation of a disability. He had been overstimulated and he was literally banging his head against the door of the jail cell, and he ended up dying 3 days later. Well, rather than the law enforcement doing what they were supposed to do and bring in a crisis coordinator or an appropriate medical professional immediately, they ended up doing so a little bit later. But they said, well, let's just put him in a restraint chair and leave him there for hours before calling medical help. He ended up dying 3 days later. I'm the father of an autistic child, and I've represented autistic children that have been in that kind of situation. The other example we're going to show is a news report involving kind of a general situation, an inmate who had, all he did was apparently hit the glass of the jail cell door, and then the sheriff's department or the police department there, they sort of get their, look like a gang riot unit or something. They get all armed up. They start to approach, and he just immediately stopped, became calm, and that was the end of it. Well, they still went in and then put him in a restraint chair for the purposes of punishment, and again, not for the purposes of avoiding danger to himself and that of others. And so we're gonna take a look at that. Then after that, I'm going to show a training video involving how a restraint chair is to be used. There's a video that I found on YouTube that will provide a lesson and a tutorial on how law enforcement is supposed to be properly using these chairs. And so let's talk about that. But before we show that first news video, I want to talk a little bit about sort of globally the issues of restraint chairs. Are they a safety tool or are they a risk of abuse? Now, restraint chairs, some see them as a tool necessary for officer and inmate safety, but others see them as a device open to abuse and excessive force. And today I want to take a closer look again at what restraint chairs, why they're used, and the ongoing debate about their role in law enforcement and correctional settings. Now, a restraint chair is a device used in jails, prisons, and some police facilities to secure a person who is considered a danger to themselves or others. But unlike handcuffs or leg shackles alone, restraint chairs immobilize much of the body to prevent kicking, spitting, self-harm, or assaultive behavior. They're typically used during severe agitation, self-injury attempts, violent outbursts, situations where someone cannot be safely managed using standard restraints. Now, why do officers use them? What are the positives? Well, supporters argue that restraint chairs prevent injuries. For officers, they reduce the need for physical struggles or takedowns, which can lead to sprains, fractures, or worse. For the person being restrained, a chair may actually be safer than prolonged wrestling or floor restraints, which have been linked to positional asphyxia. Other possible benefits include providing a controlled way to calm an escalating situation, reducing injuries during transport, or preventing self-harm in people who are highly intoxicated or mentally unstable. In theory, when used correctly and monitored closely, restraint chairs can be a temporary safety tool. Now, the negatives and the risks, these are the concerns and the controversy that I want to talk about. Restraint chairs come with serious risks, both physical and ethical. Improper use can lead to circulation problems, nerve damage, pressure sores, severe psychological distress, and breathing difficulties. There's also the risk of over restraining. That's tight straps, extended time periods, or using the chair when safer alternatives exist. Critics argue in some facilities, officers rely on their chair too quickly instead of de escalation tactics. Now, the newspaper headlines, legal documents, oversight committees, let's talk about that. Across the country and internationally, multiple investigations have uncovered instances where restraint chairs were used in ways that violated policy or crossed into outright abuse. Common types of misuse include leaving individuals restrained for hours longer than policy allows. And that's going to be something that you'll be looking at in each of these two news reports. And there'll be a third video news report will show where a particular sheriff's department, how they changed their policy and do updating their policy to avoid these issues and doing the right thing. Now, using the chair as punishment instead of for safety, or they're applying restraints too lightly, or failing to conduct medical checks, applying restraints too tightly, using the chair on people with medical conditions or a mental health crisis without proper supervision. Now, some high-profile cases involved individuals who were suffered serious injury or died after prolonged restraint. And again, that's going to be that first video that we talk about here in a moment. These tragedies have sparked lawsuits, public outcry, and demands for reform. So again, we're going to talk about that footage of the training session and the de-escalation diagrams. Now, in response, many states and agencies have reviewed or changed their policies. Common reforms include strict time limits, mandatory medical checks every 10 to 15 minutes, body-worn camera review, which is key because that's really the only way we can prosecute these cases in civil claims is if there's video of the person being placed in the restraint chair. But that video could also be evidence for the law enforcement that they did things correctly. Detailed documentation and supervisor approval. Bans on the using the chair for punishment. Specialized mental health intervention teams. These are the types of reforms that we need. Now, alternatives gaining support include crisis intervention training, soft restraints, sensory rooms or calming spaces, and increased staffing for mental health care in jails and prisons. So, restraint chairs remain one of the most debated tools in corrections and law enforcement. Used properly, they can prevent injuries and save lives. Used improperly, they can cause harm, trauma, or even death, as, again, this first news report video will show. Ultimately, the challenge is finding the balance between safety, human rights, and accountability. Let's take a look at this first video. And again, this is about an autistic young man, a teenager who was neurodivergent. He's having a manifestation in this jail cell. You see the front of his head where he'd been banging his head so long against the door that it took so long to respond, and that he died of what looks to be some kind of traumatic brain injury. Let's take a look at this.
Groundbreaking KMBC9 investigation is forcing changes in jails and prisons across the country.
Our recent KMBC9 Chronicle Restraint found more than 100 deaths and injuries linked to restraint chairs and systems in 29 states. Investigative reporter Matt Fleener shows us a father pleading for better training for jail staff after his son's death. And the video you're about to see is hard to watch, but important to see.
Yeah, he was a great kid. He was happy.
19, a gifted musician.
Busting rhymes, but you know where that hit on.
This was the Isaiah Trammell his family knew and loved.
You don't even want to know what I be.
Kelsey Trammell is Isaiah's dad.
I'm disappointed that nobody got him the help or care that he needed.
2 years have passed since Isaiah Trammell's last moments in the Montgomery County jail. In those moments, you can see Isaiah banging his head against the clear jail door.
When Isaiah would get overstimulated, he would bang his head, help him calm down.
Isaiah lived with autism, ADHD, and Tourette's syndrome. His dad said Isaiah would often bang his head in what people with neurodivergence call stimming to self-soothe. Off camera, Isaiah also told jail staff he couldn't breathe. Deputies had booked him that morning on a previous domestic violence warrant his family believes was a complete misunderstanding due to his neurodivergence. Isaiah also said he wanted to commit suicide. But instead of taking him to a hospital, jail staff strapped his hands, his legs, and his chest into a restraint chair 2 times. This last time, a deputy took a picture of a bump on his head he got from banging his head on that jail cell door.
And that was one of Isaiah's triggers. If somebody touched him, or even a seatbelt, it would be a sensory overload. Anybody that has seen what has happened to him can clearly see that he's having a mental health crisis.
Isaiah remained strapped down in a restraint chair, in and out of consciousness, when a medical worker tried to calm him. 10 hours after his booking, he eventually went to the hospital, where 3 days later he died. An autopsy listed complications of blunt force head trauma as the cause. His death listed as a suicide.
It was literal torture.
His father believes jail staff should have done so much more to help his son.
To sit in a restraint chair and have a mental health crisis and just want help, being ignored.
He wants jail and prison staff across the country to watch Isaiah's story, to update their training and change how they handle those with neurodivergence, besides strapping them down to a chair.
As we get out, the more people that voice their concerns, the only way you're going to get change.
A special thank you to our sister station WLWT in Cincinnati for capturing that interview. Isaiah's family has also filed. Montgomery County, Ohio said it has started collaborating with the Autism Society there in Dayton on updated training, and NAFCare, the health care provider that day, has not responded.
Now, Matt, we know since your Chronicle Restraint aired that law enforcement all over has started viewing your Chronicle as part of their training.
That's right. And this could hopefully be another story that they watch in that training. Isaiah's dad really hoping all law enforcement will implement what's called safety on the spectrum training. They have a specific training for first responders through the National Autism Society. I've posted that to my Facebook page. You can also watch our full investigation right now on KNBC.com/restraint.
And you can also watch KNBC9 Chronicle Restrained right now on our YouTube channel. It's also available to stream on the Very Local app, which you can download for free. And there will be an encore showing of the documentary on KCW. Catch it Saturday, May 17th at midnight.
That was so sad to see what that child went through, what his family is having to go through. And I assume that they're still litigating that lawsuit, or maybe they had a successful conclusion. I'm going to look into that a little bit. And I'm particularly interested in starting to take some of these restraint chair cases as excessive force cases, cruel and unusual argument under the Constitution, that's what it specifically violates, that clause. Let's take a look at this news video. This is again about a young man who was at a jail cell. He hit a glass cell one time, maybe had been mouthing off, and then you see how the jail staff overreacts. They have this unit where they put all these protective gear on, to wear the helmet, the baton, and they go in and they put him in the restraint chair. And you know, one of the other things also that we look at in some of these restraint chair cases is where not only do they put the people in these restraint chairs and then they tighten them down and they're no longer a threat, but then they tase these people. Now, that didn't appear to happen in this particular news video, but that does seem to be happening quite a bit in these excessive force and abuse cases across the country. Let's take a look at this.
Well, the U.S. Court of Appeals says a jury should decide whether Gwinnett County jailers used excessive force when they put prisoners in a restraint chair.
The Fox 5i team first aired controversial videos 3 years ago showing prisoners tackled and strapped into the chairs, even though some were calm and compliant.
Well, Fox 5i team reporter Randy Travis returns with what this latest court decision could mean for the use of that chair and the cost to Gwinnett County taxpayers. Randy?
That's right, Russ and Elise. Yeah, jail policy forbids these chairs be used for punishment. Instead, they're supposed to protect the inmate from self-harm and taxpayers from expensive medical care. But could their frequent use wind up costing even more?
You may remember what happened to Justin Shuford in 2013. When we talked to him back then, he was just trying to forget.
Just bring back some bad memories. I ain't never trying to go back in there.
Maybe that's the point they were trying to make on you.
Maybe.
Brought into the Gwinnett County Jail on a probation violation from an earlier DUI conviction, Shuford punched the cell wall one time. When he saw the jail's rapid response team gear up, he quieted down. But 8 minutes later, they still stormed inside.
Because it wasn't necessary. I was calm. I wasn't being disruptive to any of the guards and anything like that.
And that's the point of a federal lawsuit, now given new life by the United States Court of Appeals. Does Gwinnett County's frequent use of restraint chairs violate a prisoner's constitutional rights? Or is it an appropriate way to prevent sometimes costly bad behavior?
The only thing we have to prove that it's unreasonable. And I'm sure any viewers that have watched these videos, you'll have some that say it's reasonable, you'll see some that say it's not. And that's why we have juries.
The Fox 5i team analyzed 75 restraint chair videos in 2013. Several showed inmates refusing to put on a suicide gown or laying down in their own urine. Prisoners clearly refusing to comply with jailers' directions. You and you and you. But we also found multiple cases just like Justin Shuford, where the prisoners seemed cooperative once they saw the restraint chair outside their cell, but still wound up strapped in for hours.
Is it fair to expect the sheriff's deputies to get all geared up for some bad behavior and then tell them to stand down if the behavior just suddenly stops?
It's not even a question of is it fair. That's what the law is.
The case was originally tossed out last year, but the Court of Appeals ruled in Justin Shuford's case and 3 others cited by the plaintiffs, the jail's use of force was objectively unreasonable and said a jury should decide the issue. Attorneys John Sakala and Craig Jones will now ask for class action status. allowing them to include perhaps another 100 clients. They want monetary damages and a court order limiting future restraint chair use.
They're still human beings. They deserve to be treated like human beings.
Sheriff Butch Conway had no comment about the court's decision to let this lawsuit move forward. In fact, they've only made one change to their restraint chair policy since 2013. They tried to video that bad behavior even earlier to better justify the need for such force.
The sheriff's policy has always been to video each incident involving the jail's rapid response team in order to protect staff from frivolous lawsuits. Now that those same videos are at the heart of this case.
Without these videos, would you have a case?
Not a case we'd be interested in, but when you've got the videos, we really don't care what our clients say happened. We really don't care what the officers say happened. The camera sees all.
Well, earlier some jail staff told me they need these restraint chairs to keep deputies safe as well as problem prisoners safe. And they're not contending, these attorneys that we interviewed, that the uses of the chair are always bad. Right. They understand that the chairs are useful. They're just saying that not in all cases, not in their cases. And the U.S. Court of Appeals apparently agrees.
Yeah, we saw what appeared to the untrained eye to be some pretty rough treatment in some instances. Any chance, Randy, do you think that Gwinnett County might change its policy again?
Well, they haven't so far, Russ, and there's been a lot of controversy surrounding those restraint chairs in the last 3 years. They haven't changed it at all, and that's why these two attorneys want class action status, so they can include some newer clients so that they can convince the court in any sort of settlement or any sort of decision to force Gwinnett County to limit the number of scenarios that might be out there where they would have the restraint chair as a possible tool. But right now, no, there are no plans, as far as I understand, to change the policy there in Gwinnett County.
On top of this for us tonight, Randy, thank you for that.
Now, this is a news video about reform by a sheriff's office or a police department, I believe in the Midwest. And they talk about how they updated their policies and they're taking proactive measures for such reform. And I appreciate the transparency that this particular sheriff or this police chief is communicating with this reporter. And they talk about what he's doing and the types of reforms that's necessary. Let's take a look at this.
Nationwide investigation at the center of a KMBC9 Chronicle is getting results. Sheriff's deputies and jail officials are using our investigation to change policies and training on restraint chairs and full body restraint systems.
Investigative reporter Matt Fleener is here after speaking with one county sheriff leading the way to make those changes, Matt.
Laura, Chris, Clay County Sheriff Will Aiken called it a no-brainer to update his restraint chair policy after KMBC's investigation. A warning, the video is tough to see, but important to know exactly what is happening in jails across the United States.
I hate getting the phone calls telling me that one of my employees is in the hospital with an orbital fracture and a fractured jaw because an inmate attacked them.
Why Clay County Sheriff Will Aiken believes restraint chairs and the Clay County Detention Center are vital to control inmates' arms, legs, and torsos when they're out of control.
One held a taser on his right leg.
And then they tapped him 3 times within 20 seconds.
Button learned about a KMBC9 investigation into the use of tasers and stun guns on fully restrained inmates. He and his staff immediately changed a county policy.
If we don't talk about this, then there's no motivation to change the way we're doing things.
Our nationwide investigation found 16 inmates stunned with electricity in restraint chairs. County sheriffs have paid at least $10 million in settlements, some deputies facing criminal charges. But KMBC9 Investigates found only 2 counties in Kansas and Missouri outlaw that practice in their full-body restraint policies. After our investigation, Clay County has become the 3rd to ban taser or stun gun use on fully restrained inmates.
You said this was a no-brainer. Why?
Well, so in my mind, it's a no-brainer. But again, if it's not clearly stated in policy, then perhaps someone else is not going to see it my way. So the easiest thing that we can do is make a change in policy, which takes 2 minutes. And then we blast it out for all of our employees to see. And so now the guessing game is taken out of it.
A county sheriff making changes to restrain the right way. To be clear, we found none of this happening in Clay County, but the policy is now updated. Clay County's detention captain has also sent our restraint investigation to all deputies in the detention center there as a caution on how things can go wrong. And we know other sheriffs are starting to use our investigation, Laura, in their training.
All right, you're getting results. Thank you, Matt. Our investigation revealed more than 100 inmates across the country who died or suffered injuries in full body restraints. Taxpayers and insurance companies have paid nearly $100 million in settlements. If you haven't seen the KMBC 9 Chronicle Restraint, there are several ways to watch. It is available right now on our KMBC 9 YouTube channel. It will soon be available to stream on the Very Local app, which you can download for free. There will also be an encore showing of the document.
Now, how should law enforcement properly place people in restraint chairs? This may also apply to medical staff that are in psychiatric units, and you have patients that have mental health manifestations where they're clearly a threat to themselves or the staff and or property. And it's very interesting to watch this video. It's about 11 minutes long, but I think it is instructive as to how to properly place somebody in the chair and without causing constitutional abuses to the person and incurring liability. I think that this will be very enlightening and instructive and help ourselves understand better what we need to do with restraint chair reform, how it's to be properly used.
Hi, I'm Dan Coogan, owner of Safety Restraint Chair. We manufacture and sell these restraint chairs to prisons and jails, hospitals, and all kinds of medical and psychiatric facilities. This training video is intended to help train you and your personnel in the process to follow in properly restraining somebody in the restraint chair. And using this process will greatly reduce the chances of handlers and detainees from being hurt. The chair also facilitates evaluating someone's medical condition, if that need be. The chair is built to handle people weighing from 80 to 400 pounds, depending upon their build. We restrain people in the chair at 7 different points on their body: both shoulders, both arms, both ankles, and the waist. The chair itself weighs 85 pounds. It's 28.5 inches wide, so it fits through a standard commercial door. It has 2 wheels with brakes, and is designed with a low center of gravity, so once somebody is in the chair, there's a very little chance that somebody's going to tip the chair over. We recommend that at all times there's at least 2 people handling a detainee in the restraint process. When you begin the restraint process, make sure that you have the chair located with enough space around for everybody to be able to work and have enough space so nobody gets hurt. It's also important that once you begin the restraint process, that all the personal items of the detainee are removed, like watches and jewelry and things like that, so we don't get anybody hurt or the handlers at that point. Once you've placed the chair in the proper space, you need to set the brakes. And to set the brakes, go to the back of the chair and you'll see 2 red levers. Take the red lever and move it towards the tire, and the top of the piston head is custom made to fit directly inside the slots in the hub of the tire. So it may be necessary sometimes to move or rotate that tire somewhat to push that piston head directly into the slots. And then once you get that there, push the lever the rest of the way towards the tire, and then that brake is secured. Repeat the process for the other side. Move the red handle towards the tire, making sure that the piston head fits inside the hub, and then push the lever the rest of the way towards the tire until it's locked out. Now both brakes are secure at that point, and the chair cannot be moved. Sometimes if you didn't have brakes, people would like to move the chair or kick the chair out of the way to make it more difficult to secure the person into the chair. So those brakes will help immensely by keeping the chair in one place and allowing you to put the person in the chair a lot easier than in the past. Now my assistant Joe will be the detainee today. So Joe, come on in. And Joe is wearing leg irons and handcuffs, which is typically used in prisons and jails. Now before you put the detainee in the chair, you'll notice that there's a cutout in the seat or in the chair back. That's to allow the handcuffed person to place his hands with handcuffs in that spot so they can still sit down comfortably in the chair. All right, Joe, go ahead and sit down. Now Joe has his hand in handcuffs through the back of the chair, which allows him to sit back in the chair comfortably. Now the first thing we want to do is, once the person is in the chair, is put on the lap strap. So come over to the right side of the chair and pull the lap strap completely out of its holder. Take it inside the chair and across his lap. Then go to the other side, and you'll notice at the end of the strap there's a loop sewed into the strap, and that loop allows you to place this over that bar and locate the strap in that position. So now go back to the other side. Oop, I got that twisted. Put the loop up and over, and now that strap is in place. Go back to the other side of the chair and then pull on the end of the strap until the strap is tight and he's secured into the chair. You can place the excess part of the strap up and over the frame because he may need to be transported, and that keeps that strap out of the way. Now the next thing we want to do is restrain the ankles. Now Joe, in this case, is wearing leg irons. The first step is to place the leg irons behind this chain retainer. So that'll hold the chain in place, and it'll keep the detainee from kicking wildly in the chair. Once the chain is behind the chain retainer, you'll want to pull out the ankle strap to its fullest extension, push the ankle back against the frame, and hold that in place. Take the strap around and back, and place the strap up in the clevis that's behind the ankle, and then pull on that strap until the strap is tight. Again, do not over tighten the strap. Make sure it's very tight. You repeat that process with the other strap. Take it all the way out, around the ankle, push the ankle back against the frame of the chair, and inside, the strap goes inside that clevis. Pull on the strap until it's tight, and now both ankles are secure. The next step in the restraint process is to place the handcuff tether, which we have at the back of the chair, and this helps keep the detainee's hands and handcuffs in place. There's a spring hook on the back or at the end of this strap, and you place that spring hook in the chain of the handcuffs that are on the detainee. Once that is in place, you can begin restraining both arms. Now we will release one arm at a time, so we will undo the handcuffs, take one arm out, place it through the arm strap. Now this is the biggest and most important part of restraining the arms. You want to make sure that the hand, the wrist, and the forearm are all flat against the armrest. It may take somebody else or a second person to make that happen, depending on how cooperative the detainee is. So you want to make sure the hand, the wrist, and the forearm are flat against that, and then pull the arm strap until it's very tight. And we don't want to over tighten it because we don't want to injure or cause pain to the detainee. But we do want to make sure that it's very tight. Many times, detainees will try to turn their hand or their arm, their wrist, so they can create a space between the armrest and the strap itself. That's why we need to make sure that the arm and the hand and the wrist are all flat to take out excess slack in the strap. So make sure that's very tight, and then proceed to this other arm. We will release the handcuff from the other side, take off the handcuff tether, bring the arm around, place it through the arm strap, and again, making sure everything is flat against the armrest. Pull that strap tight, so it's very tight, but not too tight. Now we have the ankles restrained, the waist, and the arms. Now because the arms used to be behind his back and are now out on the armrest, there may be some slack in the lap strap. So we should retighten that and make sure that that lap strap is secure. Now the final step in the restraining process are the shoulder straps. Now you'll notice that the shoulder straps have a V built into them. So we want to make sure that this V is placed at the back of the neck like this, and we drape the shoulder straps around their shoulders. You then take the first strap underneath their armpit and then back over the frame until you see the clevis there. Now there are knots sewed into the strap, and you want to put one of those knots underneath that clevis and then slide that strap right in there so it's fairly tight. Repeat that on the other side. Pull the arm strap back underneath the arm, over the frame, making sure we have a knot underneath the clevis, slide the strap in, and now that's fairly secure. We've finished tightening the shoulder strap by pulling this back, getting both straps in place correctly around the head, and then pull tightly on that shoulder strap. And that'll make sure that both shoulders are pushed back against the chair back. You'll notice that the straps have another benefit. They provide a cushion for the head. Sometimes people would like to hurt themselves once they got in the chair by banging their head against the chair back, or even if there was a wall nearby and the chair was close to a wall, they would try to bang their head and hurt themselves. This provides a small cushion for their head so they cannot hurt themselves. So that's the process in properly restraining somebody into the chair. Once somebody has been in the chair for 2 hours, we recommend that they be taken out of the chair and allowed to walk around and get their circulation going again, because we don't want to restrict any circulation or breathing in any way once the detainee has been in the chair for 2 hours. So they need to take a break after 2 hours and then place back in the chair if need be. If you have any questions, you can go online to our website, restraintchair.com, and fill out a contact form and send us your questions. on how to use and restrain people in this chair. You can also get our phone number there and call us directly. So we look forward to working with you, and thanks for your time today.
Well, at the beginning of this video, we talked about the issues of the pros and the cons of why restraint chairs are used, how they're beneficial, how they're coercive, with the consequences of the chair. We looked at the video of how it affects mental health patients in a jail setting with that young man who was, again, a neurodivergent teenager, had autism and other issues. And then we see how it affected just general inmates in a population and how it's used for coercive and punitive measures and for punishment and not for the purpose of restraining the person, again, to protect themselves and to protect others. So, and then we saw the training video about how it's properly to be used. I hope that you gained some insight and valuable knowledge from this. So please click like, share, and subscribe, and have a great evening.